Hello there. We have a great unclean one who hasn't been dry brushed. We have a Black Friday deal on, which I will explain in a second, which is linked to the size of brushes that you should be using. And recently, follow us on Instagram, I put up a poll asking what people would like to see me demonstrate, and it was unanimously voted for. People wanted to see the wet blending that I did on this guy's skin. It is very effective. You're going to have to go outside of your comfort zone a little, but once you have and you've recalibrated, you should be able to adjust to a very new, cool style of painting, which will allow you to do things that probably you couldn't do otherwise. Right, brush sizes. We have a deal on our individual brushes on our website now, because it's Black Friday. We've also got some beautiful Black Friday boxes available. You have to use the largest brush possible for this technique, or it literally won't work. Your paint will have dried before you get to the next step, which won't work. If you're trying to wet blend, you'll just be layering. Your rules are Space Marine, size 2 will do, but a 3 if you can get away with it. Anything Troll size or Terminator size or larger, size 3 or a 4 or higher. And then anything this size, literally the number starts at a size 4. It has to be a size 4 or greater. It will not work. Think of our cloaks video where I used a 6. You don't need a small brush, you need a good point, but you need to be able to work fast. Bigger brushes go faster. The technique looks amazing, and hopefully what it will allow you to do is paint more generally rather than specifically focusing on little details, and that will unlock this. I painted him pretty punchy, so he's designed to even look good in no lighting, and that takes a lot. So hopefully this is what you can achieve. And maybe you don't have to worry so much about painting big models. Okay. Here we are. Any questions you've got about the technique, anything you are intimidated by or didn't go right for you, put it down below. I will read each and every one and I'll answer any questions. Check out our Black Friday deals below, including the boxes, and I'm going to give you advice coming up now on exactly how to assess your paints in order to be able to pick the right ones for this type of work. All right, let's jump in. I'm going to be using Mini Color, which are our paints. There'll be a link down for them below. You can still late pledge them at this point if you're watching the video soon after it's out, or you can buy them if it's far into the future. But what I'm going to help you out with is I'm going to give you some quick tips for assessing your own paint to make sure that you can find paint that behaves in the way that you need, and that will allow you to paint in the same style as me, whatever brand of paints you're using. I'll see if I can get some this style equivalents listed. They'll be listed at the end of this. So yeah, let's jump in. Don't worry, it's going to be fine. Big brush, go fast. This will win you best painted armies, especially if you do it on a great unclean one, which I would recommend. Let's go. Okay, so we have Midnight, Jade, Spearmint, and then Lemon. And we're going to use all of these with their unique, useful properties. I need a bit more of that. And it's going to make this far easier. Now, what you need at the beginning is a strong, deep paint. That doesn't mean crazy coverage, just deep, like a strong, cool color. Literally cool in this case, like cold. Then you need something that's a little bit better for coverage. I'm going to be showing you how to assess this with your paints. Then we need something a little bit greener. If you're doing it in these colors, you can just take the general approach that I'm taking and apply it in different colors. If you're doing this in a red or a purple or something like that, it would look great in purple, by the way. Just finish with a lavender rather than a lemon yellow. Look good in peach too. Okay, so we have our paints out. Your first paint, now you want something that's a really deep, colorful color, but not great on coverage. You can see the white is showing through easily on that. Next color, this is Jade. It's a very nice color, but it's a little bit dirtier. Like, it's not so pure. It's not like mega vibrant. And you can see that it's doing a bit of a better job of coverage. Your final steps, you want paint that has a bit more white in. So you can see this wants to cover over the lines on my paper really easily. You can assess it's over black on your palette as well, or just somewhere middle or dark. You can see it's covering over whatever it needs to. And then finally, your final color, you could use any icy pastel equivalent here. You want it to be really high in white and super punchy. So that's the type of paints that you need. Now let's show you how to put them to good use. Now, using a good big brush is mandatory for this. Sirens, thank you, Manchester. It's contamination police after us again. You should see the state of my water. Okay, so we need a really big brush here. You need a 4 or you need a 5 or a 6 would be absolutely fine. And you just got to get used to the fact that you're going to be putting a lot of paint down and going quite quick. I'm gonna do his arm, but I need to paint his fleshy hand black first. 1 second. You can do this over a gray base, by the way, or something if you like something lighter than black. I am simply showing it over black because a lot of people use Chaos Black as a primer like I do and like working up from black. But if you want it to be all a little bit more vibrant, then you can absolutely do it over a gray base, or you could do it over a dark green base or something like that. Anything lighter than black, which is literally anything. He had a little bit of very first stages of pre-highlight dry brushing on him as well, so I'm going to cover those over so you don't need to worry about having anything done to your model other than it being black. Chaos Black, by the way, if you're using a primer, do not use a matte primer for this. It will make your paints dry out much faster, and Mini Color has a good working time. You should use paints with a good working time on them, not too fast, but using a matte primer will drastically reduce the working time of any of your paints that you choose to use, so you do not want to use a matte primer. First steps first. Not going to be starting from our darkest color. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be working out where our highlights are going to go. And it's really easy for Great Unclean One, for me at least, having painted about 10 of them by now. There is an imaginary highlight line here, which I've highlighted in my previous video that I did with Zamikito, where you have like a bar that kind of swirls across the Mini, and you can see where stuff is glinting off his arm now, because we've got satin prime. I'm going to give myself paint by numbers here. So this isn't going to ruin anything. It doesn't need to be neat. This is telling me where I plan on putting my highlights later, so I don't forget, because I'm forgetful, and in the middle of things it's just useful for me to have a stencil. So I've just copied what the light is doing. No more complex than that. What the light is shining off the most at this angle. You can see it glinting even more now it's wet. I'm just going to put an indication down there of where we're going to highlight. Easy. If you wanted to know for the rest of him, for his boobies, it would be like tilt it around, kind of be towards the top of these. And any fold concentrates light at the most sticking out bit. Wherever I spin this, it's just the only place this is going to be light is pointing at the light and in the middle. So each of these folds is its very own shape. And in separation, you know, this fold is going to be lightest across here. You can dry brush this to give yourself a guideline for this too. Exactly where they've hit is where they're going to be lightest. Okay, scary wet blending is not scary. I'm not going to use too much dilution here. You don't need to be using that much. Just make sure that your paint doesn't go on like too physically thick, and you need to work fast. So blob it down all over like the lower half, or the bits that you can see from looking at your Mini from underneath. Working fast is mandatory. You just got to let go of any perfectionism or stuff like that. You have to work quick. It is non-optional, or your paint will dry and you won't be wet blending. If it's on the inside and really hard to reach, it should be dark. So you need to get it with this step, but maybe you only need to hit it with the darkest color. So start with those areas and then go to the areas that you're going to need to paint on. Hardest to reach first. I'm going to decide where my stop is because I'm painting him in sections. So it's going to be this fold is as far as we are painting today. All right, so we are working quite fast. Now what we're going to start doing is we're going to wet blend, again with almost neat paint. The more water there is there, the faster it will evaporate, remember. So I've got to go around all of my joining points as we're coming up towards the top of the model. And we're going to grab Jade and make a mix, and we're just going to blob them together, literally. Again, working quick is the name of the game. I'm going to be doing his disgusting indented bits separately and afterwards. While it's wet, I'm going to get more of it. This is nearly pure jade. We've just got what was left in the brush left, and we're going to This does not need to be perfect. It does not need to be smooth. This is not the final version of highlighting, and our final version of highlighting is going to fix and hide a load of problems. Trust the process. My top needs to be much lighter. I forgot to look at the back, give myself guidelines. I know it's chaotic. Embrace it. Literally chaotic, it's Nurgle. Right, looking very fast now, starting from our light lines blob some of this down. And we're going to try and stick to raised areas. We're not, like if we go in the folds, it's okay, but we're not aiming to get inside the folds. If you wash your brush, take off some of the moisture, you can do blending together between two colors. Just be aware how much of what color is on the brush. Folds. You got some rules. It should be lighter at the top and darker at the bottom. If anything doesn't look right, it's probably that. Okay, so it might not look like much, but you can always repeat. You're better off to learn from it and have a little look at it, but repeating will go a long way. So I'm going to quickly show you what just layering more jade will do. It's not like a super opaque paint, therefore reps count. However, what we can do is we can literally just do another round of wet blending, and because our paints aren't opaque, whatever we do will kind of stack on top of each other and we'll start seeing more of it. So there you can see what happens. Even just a quick pass starts making a difference, and because we're putting it over a foundation that's kind of echoing this, even though we're now not wet blending, we're just popping some down a little bit thinned, it's really quite forgiving. So you shouldn't be worried about this type of stuff. I am going to do a bit of pre-shading. So what you can do is, if you want any of your colors to look more punchy, you take any light color. It could be your final highlight color, like I'm using here, lemon, but you could just add white into the color that you're currently using or something like that. And then anywhere that you're going to highlight over, you have to make sure that you cover all this because it'll look terrible if not. You can lighten up artificially. So here's the little buboes. Now, whatever I paint over those, it'll be lighter over the light stuff. You can already see what the visual benefit of that is going to be because those horrible bits are standing out beautifully. So I'm going to do a little bit of the pre-highlighting here, exactly where we want it to be the very brightest. And you'll be able to compare it front and back. It might feel pretty scary doing this stuff. That's fine. Price of being bold and trying new things. You can always cover over it if you need to. Right, we do not want that to be partially dry though. That needs to be 100% dry before we do any painting on top of it. Okay, so same again, but as you're putting it over itself, you should find that the colors are fluff. The colors are that little bit stronger. I'm going to do all of the back of his arm to show you. Can literally mix on the model if you're feeling brave, but probably best to do your mixes on your palette. So you have two options at this point. Hopefully you can see just how much the underpainting is showing through. We can continue wet blending, you know, we just shrink the area that we're doing it in. Let me show you an example. Jade all over this section. I'm highlighting on the folds now, and at the top it's just everywhere. And then we would take spearmint, and we could just continue as we have. Pretty forgiving, pretty fast. Or we could just go for conventional highlighting. You know, whatever you like, whatever you feel comfortable with. If you just want to, you're like, cool, I've learned enough of wet blending, and now I want to go into my comfort zone with normal highlights. That's absolutely fine. Learning how to combine techniques is a really important part, and you won't discover that if you don't experiment with it. What I'm going to do though, is I'm just going to do some brave, quick layering, and we're going to go for something punchy. And the fact that we're going for something punchy makes it a bit more forgiving. But But we're gonna try and bring it up so it's, you know, at that level, which is pretty full on. But we do want things to stand out, so puppy's got to look shiny. So keeping our strokes on the raised folds. You could do it as wet blending, or if we find somewhere dry. You can do it normally, you know, just whatever suits. If anything's too much, wet brush, fuzz it out a little bit. You can hide stuff pretty easily in this type of painting. The more textured an area is, generally speaking though, the easier it's going to be, and the less kind of faith or hope you're going to need. You can hide a lot in heavily textured areas. Okay, so here we have punchy, you know, this is a bit cartoony and crazy, and then we've got more subtle with wet blending there, or you could use more dilution, it's up to you. But we're starting to look pretty good. If you go too far, just take your previous color and dilute it and paint it over this one, and it'll be fine. I'll show you that so you don't have to take it on faith. So we've got a load of our peppermint here, add in a load of the jade. We can just soften things here. So play around. We're not using many different colors, and that means if something goes wrong, generally speaking, it's pretty clear what you need to do. You go back to your previous color, you do a bit of a blend, and the bit that looks too unsubtle, you put a layer of semi-transparent paint over that. Details like this are something we should really make the most of. So I'm going to highlight the bottom of these, and that'll make them look more three-dimensional. Now I'm going to be willing to go pretty bright on any of these details at the end because we need to them to stand out, make the most of them. Having not dry brushed this, we're going to have to do this manually. If we were dry brushing, they would be painting themselves. So it's just, you know, some techniques have got different strengths and weaknesses, and having to manually pick out pustules and all these little pitted sections and stuff is a definite downside. But we can go really fast and we can control our colors, and we can put down thick paint if we need without it looking too bad. So pluses and minuses. And of course you can absolutely mix the techniques. Be brave. Brave highlights. And the other pluses of doing layering is if you've got gaps from assembly, you can literally paint through them, kind of obscure and hide them, whereas dry brushing highlights the mistakes. So pluses and minuses, like I said. Time to move on, step up. This is really going to make a huge difference. So this is lemon, and even adding a tiny bit of this to our paint will make it go nuts. So we're going to need to be quite careful. This should be going only inside areas you've already highlighted. So we've stepped up. Spearmint had more white in it, then the yellow has got tons more white in it, so they're going to do a lot more, a lot faster. We've got to be confident with where we're putting it, and that's one of the reasons why it's nice to start with a forgiving soft technique and finish with a less forgiving hard one, because we've kind of learned our mini a little bit. The very final steps do a lot to tie things together, and even if things don't go perfectly now, you wouldn't believe what the final highlights do. To kind of push this stuff into the background. All right, bravery time again. So much bravery called for. Going to step all the way up. Green with a lot of the yellow added in. Start where you know it's going to need to be really bright. The paint is going to be more matte and more strong at this point. It's got a lot more white in it, and it will make a very big difference very easily. Again, if you go too far, you can just paint over it with your previous color. It'll really help rewind it back. Starting to make sense now. We just have to trust the process. I'll say it again, if you feel like you've gone too far with anything, I'll show you an example now. You can just paint your previous color over this one. So in this case, it would be grabbing spearmint and we think we went too far here, just paint over it. And then you could literally repeat what you'd done before, but more carefully or in a more selective area or something like that. So much more forgiving than you would think. Literal final steps. Get an all but pure version of the final color. I think really carefully about where you're going to put it. Make sure you get the best angles for whatever you're doing. Take practice strokes on your hand, just so you know exactly how the brush is going to behave. Whatever helps you out. There we go. Crazy high impact, quite fun, quite fast, and you will learn a surprising amount in a pretty short time frame.